thank you for having me. This is was quite the surprise and quite the honor. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you everybody here for taking your time to listen to my personal story. Let's go ahead and get going. So, again, thanks for having me. This is just my career journey. There's going to be some tips and tricks of things that I've learned along the way. So let's kick right into it. Let me talk about what I do. I'm a distinguished designer over at Dell. And what my primary job has been really sort of for the last 15 years is to work directly with V level and C level executives to imagine their 2 to 5 year user experience visions and strategies. Where do they want to go? What is the ideal? What is the best possible user experience? And how do we get there? And it's a very, very specialized position, and I'm very, very lucky to have gotten into it. I've had an amazing amount of things that just happened in my life, but everybody sort of asks the question. A lot of designers don't do what I do, and they're like, what is the secret to getting to this level and working directly with the V and Cs? And the reality is, it was just stupid, dumb luck in my life. There's a lot of things that came together that allowed me and empowered me to sort of get where I'm at. And so while I've been really lucky at a lot of things, I've also learned a lot of things about that. So hopefully, some of these things are going to be helpful for you. I don't want to make this about me. I really want to make this about things that you can do to help move your career along by talking about sort of the things that happened to me. So let me go back to this. So you can see that I began working in 1975. And since then, I've been doing graphic design. And about 1992, 93, I moved over into the digital world. And so really for the last 45 years, I've been into either graphic design or UX design. And I love what I do. I love what I do now more than ever. So how did I get here? Well, this goes back to my parents. And, it was a situation of both nature and nurturing. So my father and my mother actually met in graphic design school, the one I ended up going to along the way. And my father turned out to be a very conservative corporate, but award-winning graphic designer for Boeing for 40 years. He's been published. He's won many awards along the way. My mother, on the other hand, had her own home studio. And she was a hippie, free-spirited, you can do anything that you want. You can be anybody that you want to be. Graphic designer and illustrator. She did a lot of kids stuff, so was very, very energetic in that regard. And then she eventually married my stepfather, who was very gregarious, very active, driven. And he was really an award-winning senior vice president of sales and marketing. And then there's me. All of these guys just fed into me. But you can sort of see I grew up in a very artistic nature, a very marketing nature, and that really helped form sort of the rest of my career. So what is the lesson learned? I was very lucky to have these people. But, the lesson that I would point out is even if your parents weren't these, go out and seek people that are better than you. And I promise you, there is always, always somebody better than you that's out there. Take the time and be proactive to find mentors, to attend, exactly sessions like this. Actively go after seeking that knowledge. And, no matter what you do, whether it's for your particular focus or even related and tangent focuses. So for example, we really want to get good at our UX design and our user experience, but take the time to go find somebody in technology. Go take the time to find somebody in business. Really understand the entire environment that you're working within and get that knowledge. So kind of like I mentioned, I started in 1975 because my mother had her studio. I started working professionally in 1978 at 7 years old. And Susan, you'll recognize a lot of this stuff, 2600 asteroids, Mikey. I know you remember Mikey, Trapper Keepers, the whole 9 yards. So I kind of joke it was indentured child labor, kind of. I mean, I was literally working for candy and a quarter so I could run down to the store and get candy, more video game time. I didn't make money. I was really just kind of forced into graphic design, but again, I absolutely loved it. The lesson learned here is you're never too young to start something, and you're never too old to start something. If you have a passion for something, always follow your heart. Go through that. Don't worry about where you are. If you want to learn something new, don't let anything stop you along the way. So by the time I got to high school, I was in all the advanced art classes, and one day I got a notice saying, "Hey, you lettered in art." Okay, people letter in football and high school and debate and math, and I got a letter in art, which is like the lamest thing you could possibly do. In fact, I didn't even let people know that I lettered in art. I was so embarrassed by it. But the lesson learned is ignore people who are critical about what you do, right? Stay focused. You love what you're doing. Don't worry about the critics. And the more you love something, the better you're going to get at it. Even if you're not right now, you will become so. And a lot of those people that were detractors actually come to see what you could do, and they respect you for that. And they often become really sort of your best supporters moving forward. So stay focused on your dream. Don't worry about, what your mother and father are telling you. You'll never be a good artist. You'll never make enough money. Don't listen to them if that's what you love. Do what you love, and you will succeed at doing it. I also grew up at the beginning of the computer age. These are really old. I don't expect most of you to even know what these things are. But I had the advantage of being poor, really, really poor. So these used computers I was able to get a hold of didn't have manuals anymore. So I had to really sort of deconstruct a lot of the stuff and learn along the way, bits here and bits there to try and even make these, ancient contraptions work. The lesson here is really take a look at other things that are tangents and related to your field. So, what I found here was these new fancy computer thingies I could actually do art on. As we know, it's ASCII art, and then eventually I learned to actually do every single pixel and begin code every pixel, like 011 and actually create art in here. And so that was kind of eye-opening to me that there are new things out there that will potentially make my life a whole lot more interesting, if not easier. And we'll see sort of later where that kicks in. So when you take a look at that and you look at these new technologies, it's going to be, because we're a commercial art, will these things make money and save money? Will I be more efficient? Will I be more effective? Can I produce more in here? Look for the upcoming trends that are coming down the line that, obviously can make you better. So I was just telling Susan this conversation, by the time I hit college, I was actually going to the same graphic design program that my mother and father did. And I just happened to walk by because we had our first computer lab being in, and I walked in being sort of a computer junkie, and I saw somebody using PageMaker, which was one of the first generation page layout programs. And I looked at it and just went, oh my God, this is totally going to change our industry. Before, where graphic design was all about pencils and pens and rubber cement and non-photo blue pencils, for those guys who are familiar with it, very tangible, tactile. You had to physically create everything. Suddenly, this thing called PageMaker would allow me to do an exactly 1-point line. Fonts that were exactly this font, exactly this size, exactly this spacing. Things that took me hours and even days to lay out physically could be done literally in minutes in this program. So the next day I went to my professors and I said, everything you're teaching will be gone in 5 years. Everything will become digital because it's so much faster, efficient, and quite honestly, it's a better quality. And I was very verbal about this with all of my other peers and the other students, to the point where they kind of invited me to leave the program in very nice but very firm words, which turned out to be great for me. And especially with the introduction of Photoshop in there. So stay up to speed on the long tail technologies and trends. Always take the time to go out there and say, hey, what is the new release of this? Or, hey, there's this new company creating this new technology, right? Or there's this new company that's introducing something new like AR and VR, AI, sorry. Keep yourself aware of what's going on and ask yourself, how can I use this to not just be better for me, but for my solutions as well? Leave your comfort zone. A lot of these things are brand new. You don't know anything about them. It's kind of a little scary and a little weird. But as through self-teaching, you don't have to worry about failing along the way. So try new things. I can't underscore that enough. And look at the things that are going to give you a professional advantage moving forward. Well, my roommate turned out to be invited to leave the college program. And this guy was a super duper duper nerd. And so he sat down and said, have you seen this thing called the web? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, holy cow. When I saw it, my graphic design mind just went, this is the world's biggest billboard. Are you telling me hundreds of thousands of people are looking at this screen right now? And he was like, yes. So it's just, I've got to learn how to do this. So, when we talk about it, you definitely want to deliver on the things that you're taking care of right now. But again, look at these new technologies. This whole World Wide Web thing was brand new. Software that allowed us to, work on images like Photoshop in here. You can see I am not a visual designer, but this was like the first website that I did for his particular site. You'll also notice that we were very proud to announce that we were actually hosting at 128K. So in the end, I was really in the right place at the right time with sort of the right skill set. At the very beginning, when we talk about the World Wide Web and, HTML and Windows 3.1, browsers called Mosaic, this is pre-Netscape. This is pre-Firefox. The big search engine was something called Archie. It just happened that I had graphic design skills there. And I also had sort of that computer background just from, playing around with that. So it all really sort of came together. The lesson learned is it isn't luck if you take the time to learn things before they're even a thing. So when this was happening, there was nothing called a web designer. It was really designers who were nerds that started doing graphics on the web. There was no profession at this time. So what you want to do is stay ahead of that curve and really set yourself up to be the only truly qualified candidate for that particular technology. And of course, bring your others. Practice, period. Seriously. So when I first learned how to do this, I just started making up websites. Like all the first generation people, I just started making sites about me. And I would update them literally every 30 days. And everything would be a change in there. And then that wasn't enough. Then I had to convince my friends they needed a website, including just putting a website up about them without even really asking them and then seeing if they like it. Then it became, I'd go out to charities and say, hey, do you need a website? It was just practice, and every version got better and better, and everything got more and more refined, and until that I actually felt pretty solid. I could probably do this as a career. We were doing things that were ahead of the time, very interactive stuff. When Flash came out, Flash 1.0, oh my God, it made everything much more possible. So ironically, one of the great things that happened to me was my divorce. And it was literally overnight forced adulting. All of this thing that was play and interesting, it was like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, I need to get serious about this. If I really want to move in a career, I can't mess around. I really got to start applying for jobs. And the lesson learned is that, family first, always. And I'll repeat that again and again because I'm a real believer of that. But as the Joker said, if you're good at something, never do it for free. And that was the switch for me. It was like, okay, I felt I was decent personally, but I think I can do this professionally. And of course, because of my divorce and all the finances, it was like, okay, I need to find a good job that's going to allow me to do that. And so go after that. Don't lose sight of why you are working. You know, you're working for your personal betterment, you're working for your family's benefit. Stay focused on that. I was also very, very lucky to have been born in Seattle, you know, which is really the Silicon Forest. So I was exposed to all sorts of different companies that I got to work at, you know, all the big ones like Amazon and Adobe and Microsoft, you know, T-Mobile, Costco. I was super lucky to be right in the middle of that, right at the right time. The lesson learned is research. Take a look at who's around you. What are the companies? What are the offerings that they have? You know, I took a look around in Seattle as a whole, there were companies I didn't even know were actually located in there. Like I didn't know T-Mobile had their corporate offices there. You know, I didn't know that like Adobe had their offices there until they actually opened them up. So take a look around and make yourself aware of all the opportunities. I'll say this a lot. You own your career. So it's really on you to be proactive to go out there and take a look at what's going on. And then I moved to Texas. And again, it was very, very lucky. So, you know, be willing to move out of your comfort zone, whether it's that moving to a different company or even moving to a different geography. You know, those are going to open up new opportunities that, you know, you can then really expand your career on. No Lumbergs. Always, always, always take a boss, not a job. I cannot tell you how important it is that you find somebody who understands what you do so you don't have to constantly explain it or defend it, and somebody that supports you, appreciates you, and supports you in what you do. You have a good boss and they will take care of you. And that takes 90% of all the politicking that you normally need to do and makes your work life way happier, much, much more fulfilling. And remember, you own your career. The boss is there to help you, but understand that corporations usually are not looking after your best interests. They're looking after their best interests. So you own moving your career forward, and having a boss that's going to support you and work you into promotions, into more advanced, complicated more things with greater impact. Absolutely priceless in your career. Don't take a job. Don't take a job without talking to your boss. And I'd say talk to your boss's boss. Make sure that you have a good line of command that's ready, really, and willing to support you. Now that was kind of the luck side, you know, and it's like I said, I learned a lot of things in there, but there's also really my personal unwavering career code. And this is general advice that hopefully anybody will benefit from. And I always tell a lot of my mentees and a lot of new people coming into corporation, set your own professional code of conduct. Working in business and especially in corporation can be very morally taxing and challenging in there. So make sure that you define who you are and what you want to be, but equally what you don't want to be. Where are your boundaries? Where are your limits? And if you're in an environment that is challenging those or is pressing upon them, that's a good sign you're probably not with the right company, right? If you feel like you're giving yourself up or you're giving your beliefs up, that's the time to move to another company. So begin your relationship with the company of knowing where your limits are, and don't fall into the trap of staying there longer if you're not if you're not happy. Right up front, be honest about where you want to be. If you want to be an individual contributor and you want to go all the way up the chain and, be at the level of an SVP as a designer or as a visual designer, be honest. Great, that's where you want to be. And that way you don't waste all the time of your career trying to go after something that is going to make you stray from where you actually want to be. If you want to lead people, if you want to be a manager, if you want to be a VP, be honest with yourself about that. If you set that right up front, you can stay very, very focused on accomplishing your goals. If you don't set it, people tend to waver sort of all over the place and don't get to where they really want to be. So be honest. That's the important part. I also advise people commit to making a better place. As you start a job, tell yourself, before I leave here, I'm going to make this place better. I'm going to make this site better. I'm going to make this piece of functionality better. I'm going to make this process flow better. I'm going to make a better user experience or a human experience by the time I leave. And the reason that I really stress that is you will leave with no regrets, right? It's like, I did my very best. I instituted change, even if a small change. When I left, that was better than when I actually arrived. Be very specific about the ROI that you uniquely bring. So as you come into this job, as you come into this team, you're being hired for something very specific. Double down and triple down on that. Be the very best and deliver on those expectations. And I guarantee you, you will become invaluable, and the career promotion just starts skyrocketing as a result of that. You will also become seen as the expert in that field. And when you're the expert, you become the go-to person. And obviously, the more you get to that, the more your career goes up, definitely much, much more quickly. This is super important. One of the best pieces of advice I got was from another designer. And he said, love what you do and take their money. And I love this. And what this has manifested to me is I actually get paid to do something I absolutely love. I quite honestly, I can't believe people pay me. I tell my managers all the time, it's like, if you weren't paying me, I'd be at home doing this for free. So thank you for paying me. And I go in every day loving what I do. There's a lot of politics that happens, right? There's a lot of conflicts that happen. There's, problems with raises and budgeting and bad clients, and there's all sorts of challenges in there. But doing what you love, right? Sitting down and doing whatever it is you do, information architecture, research, IA, testing, visual design, UX design. You're here to do what you love. So stay focused on that. And remember, you're getting paid to do this. Don't let all of this other stuff distract you from doing what you love. Even if it's at another team or another company. So HR hates it when, I work with a lot of my mentees, and some of my responses is, you need to leave. For where you want to be and your happiness that's going on, you're better off in this team, in this organization, in the same company, or quite honestly, you're going to be much better fitted over here in this other company, maybe even a different industry altogether. Don't lose what you love. Never start to get to the point where you dislike coming into work. You dislike, opening up a file and starting to work on something. These are all signs and triggers that it's time to find something else. If you haven't been able to institute that change and bring people along, don't waste your time. You will succeed much, much more quickly by continuing to be in these places where you can actually grow and make that progress. Chaos and ambiguity equals opportunity. I love this quote from Bruce Lee. To hell with circumstances, I create opportunities. And I know a lot of what we do in our world, it's very ambiguous. People have ideas. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it works. They don't know how it manifests, but by God, I want to be there. And so what happens, as you guys all know, is there's massive churn, right? It's like, well, how about this? And how, what are we going to do here? And who's handling that? And, I've had projects that have literally had 6 months of churn as they tried to figure things out. This is your opportunity. So in the middle of all of this, go do what you do and do it the very best. And you'll be the first person to come up with tangible answers and a tangible attack plan of what can be done. And what happens is, amid all this chaos and ambiguity, people latch on to the thing that is most solid, right? It's like, holy cow, after 3 months, somebody has a solid idea. Let's get on board with that. A lot of the time, we're behind schedule, right? A lot of time, wait a minute, the client and the executive isn't happy. We have to come up with something. Be the first person, be the first solution in there. And in this crazy sea, people are going to hold on to the thing that's absolutely solid. And that's your opportunity. That's where design begins to lead business, right? This is where we get design thinking in and we're able to serve the best because we're not getting caught up in all the chaos that's going on. This is the chance to bypass all of that and really move your design forward and your solutions forward. And again, this comes back to being seen as the expert in there and eventually becoming the go-to person. And eventually, sort of when you reach my level, executives just come directly to me. They don't go to their project managers or their business owners. They say, okay, hey, Ares, I got this idea. Before I start this whole churn with all the big rest of the team, let's sit down and let's talk about a vision so we avoid that churn. We'll start the conversation with a clear objective, a vision and a strategy, and then we'll spend the resources actually going and executing it. So that is your opportunity. Don't be afraid of that ambiguity or chaos. Embrace it and really take advantage of it. Everything is part of an ecosystem. And this is something you really, really want to change your mindset and think about this as a paradigm shift in your thinking. There's nothing that's completely unto itself. No website, no functionality, no process, no company. Everything belongs in a bigger ecosystem. And the more you understand everything that happens before the thing that you're working on and the thing that happens afterwards, the more accurate solution you can create because you understand the previous needs and, quite honestly, a lot of the issues and problems, and that gives you the chance to fix it. But fixing it is only as good as ensuring you're not causing problems after your process. So you have the chance to not only fix things and become more efficient and more effective leading up to this point, but also afterwards. Perhaps your solution, when you take a look at it, automates everything and everything downstream is automated. Fantastic. So never think about just your one piece. Take the time to understand the end to end so you can make both sides as efficient and as effective as possible. There's a great quote from one of my idols named Miyamoto Musashi. He wrote a book, The Book of Five Rings, which is an old Japanese 1600 samurai strategy book. But I think he put it best. And he said, know one thing, know 10,000 things. And what that means is as you get a new piece of information, understand how it affects every other thing upstream and downstream. How does that new piece of information affect your entire world and your thinking? And this isn't just, business. This is everything in your life. Always reevaluate. As you get new information, reevaluate, figure out where things are and understand that ecosystem. Always do your very, very, very best and then negotiate down from there. Never give people the V1 because what's going to happen? They're going to scope that down and they're going to cut it all out. And it's not going to be anything that you design. Give them the V10. And then as they begin to scope things down, hopefully you'll get the majority of the things that you wanted to get in there. So it's setting up a few different things. It's like V10, that's the vision. That's where we want to be. Now let's begin to scope down and understand that, V1 really needs all of these things to achieve. Make somebody else say no first. Never be the first one to say no to something. Go ahead and do it. Go ahead and solve it. That's our job, right? Our job is to create the ultimate human experience in there. And I'm not going to say no. Somebody else is going to have to say no. I'll never start with the no. It's still almost always who you know. It's been this way for essentially all of humanity. So I can't encourage people enough to network. And a lot of this, a lot of designers are hesitant to go out and meet new people. It's getting out of our comfort zone. A lot of us are introverts in there, and I know this is a chore, and it's a hard thing to start doing. But once you start doing it, it starts to get much, much easier. And you want to do this to build up your network, because every individual you meet is a professional opportunity. You have no idea who this person is, which means you have no idea what they're working on or what their interest is or who they're looking for or what skill set they need. So I think of networking as literally just a series of interviews with as many people as I can to try and find out what they're doing, but also, let them know what my value is. What can I bring to them? It's like I said, everyone is a potential professional opportunity individually, but you never know who they know. They have their own network, and it's just like, oh, wow, you would be really good talking to this other person because he's looking exactly for you. Let me do an introduction. Let me get you over there. And, it could be as simple as, hey, here's another project you might be interested to. Here's another team, or even here's another company that you can move your career on forward. So it's a little tough and it's a little awkward at first, but it's one of the most important things that you can do. So, for example, the last 6 jobs I've had, I've never gone to apply for anything. Somebody has always come to me and said, hey, we could really use you over at this company. So I haven't job searched for maybe a decade and a half now. Networking. It is the most powerful tool you can use to really move your career forward. And you have to fully commit to actually putting in the work. The reality is if you want to move your career forward and go above and beyond, then that means you're going to have to do the work of going above and beyond. The reality is there is no magic bullet. If you want to get into the most senior positions, it isn't a 40-hour work week. It's nights and it's weekends. Control yourself. With design, we're very, very busy. And, in that case, we're going to be really busy, but we're also going to have the downtime, as we're waiting for the next things in there. Put that extra effort in. That's what's going to really make you stand out, especially when we talk about promotions or opportunities. My stepfather put it best, and he said, the harder you work, the luckier you will be. And at the time, I was like, no, that isn't the way luck works. Throughout my career, though, that's exactly what's happened. So, when I talk about my whole career being on luck, a lot of things happen. The hard work did create very quote unquote lucky opportunities that has allowed me to really move forward. And so to bring everything sort of full circle, my career was stupid, dumb luck. Statistically, I probably shouldn't even be here presenting you to right now, right? If had not all these things come together, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at having this conversation or this presentation right now. But again, there's things that you can learn from all of that stuff. You don't have to have luck. You can make your own luck. And hopefully some of these things are able to help you guys move along. And with that, thank you. Thank you for sticking around for the whole thing. And any questions and answers?
Got a couple questions in chat. The first one was from Pai Pai. She wanted to know, how do you identify the right boss during the interview process? Do you only consider the design lead level? Do you also need to consider up to a C level?
Absolutely. So what I'd recommend is talking to your manager at least two levels above. Oh, I think we got somebody who needs to mute. No, okay. So what I'd recommend is, no matter what level your boss is, whether it's a manager or a senior manager or a director, talk to your boss and then ask to talk to their boss. And what I'm really looking for when I talk to them is I really want to understand their understanding of design. One of my big red flags is working for somebody who isn't a designer or hasn't had that creative background, right? Because that begins to open up questions about, do you really even understand or appreciate what I do? And, can I actually grow under you? So I'm looking for people with design backgrounds. I'm looking for people that have a diversity of knowledge. Even though they're a UX designer, they also have an understanding of how business works. And they also have understanding of client management, has sort of those skill sets. I'm also looking for somebody that is a seasoned manager. You want to try and avoid the brand new managers. You want somebody who has been kicked around a little while and really knows how to operate. I ask them about what their commitment is to design, but that I go into more detail with their boss and say, okay, what does the budgeting look like for design? What is your vision for where this design team is going to go? Where do you see my position, advancing? And where should we be in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years? The bottom line is make sure that they understand design. There are a few non-designers that have been very, very good managers, but it's because they're those great type of people that will tell you, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm going to hire the best experts to come in and do all of these things because I don't know what it is, and I'm just going to support you. But definitely earlier in your career, you're going to want somebody with experience, especially to help you move your technical and your soft skills forward. Did that answer it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
That
awesome.
is totally, yeah.
No, it's a great question.
Awesome. So we've got a couple more in the chat. One was from Susan. What's the time you waited and didn't say no first and it worked out well in your career?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of that question?
What's a time that you waited and didn't say no first and it worked out in your career? Susan, do you want to maybe elaborate on this?
Yeah, I just wanted a war story of, that you held out and didn't immediately sort of, succumb to limitations, but held space for a possibility that actually came to fruition.
Oh, sort of. I'd actually say almost at the very beginning, and it's not necessarily a good story. Again, because our profession was so new, right? The web designer was a brand new thing. Nobody really knew how to use this. I was obviously the only designer within inside of the team. My problem, and we can talk about sort of how I got burned on that, was I was pretty arrogant. Because I was the only person that knew about design, I would defend design all the way to the very end. I did that poorly. I definitely didn't have the right soft skills. I didn't bring people along. I held out and was very hard headed. And with a certain company in particular, I paid the price for that. So what I began to do was, it wasn't, but I was also talking about V1, right? It's like, this has to be in this has to be in this release, this has to be in this release. And that's where I kind of learned to say, okay, let's look beyond that release and let's compromise backwards. And then in the end, I usually got most of the stuff that I wanted in V1, and it didn't have to be a fight, right? Everybody was like, oh, I see where we're going. That's great. The things that you're asking for in this release, that makes sense because it's going to get us to where we want to be. I get it. I understand it now. Let's go ahead and put those with inside of the V1s. And so originally I was very, very hard headed. And then I started getting a little craftier, which is all part of those soft skills. It's all part of that influence, and bringing people along rather than fighting them, in that regard. So yeah, hard lesson. Definitely had to leave the team and the company as a result of that. But hopefully I'm a little more collaborative now than I was before.
What's beautiful that you're describing that you had a learning curve in learning to lead people and learning to help, internal clients understand what you were talking about. We always want, a lot of us think that we can't make any mistakes. And the mistakes are the most important part sometimes, I think.
Oh, without a doubt. So all of these lessons learned is usually a result of me having messed something up along the way. With this presentation is really me kind of showing you my scars of things that I did wrong along the way. And what I'm suggesting is really sort of the more efficient and effective ways of approaching, different clients or presenting work or taking opportunities in there. So I don't think there's anything in here that I didn't get cut on or burned on somewhere along the way. Our mistakes are what define us. But if you learn from that, I never really consider it a loss, a bad thing. Making mistakes is part of what we do. And that's okay, as long as we learn and move forward from it.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Is my audio still messed up?
It's good. It's good.
Good. All right. Yeah, we've got quite a few questions, which is exciting.
Let's go.
So next is Paula. She wants to know, what is the best way to prepare for for an interview for a senior UX writer at a company that simplifies cloud computing, and focus on a point of view, case study, demonstrate practice leadership. And then what do you do about conflicting feedback from stakeholders?
Okay, so those are.
We need to take those one at a time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. There's two questions in there. So content writing, the thing, I'm not a content writer, and I usually don't interview them, so I can't tell you what is best practices other than what I'm really looking for from a senior content writer. And what I'm looking for from them is a couple of different things. The first one is, above all things, is, are you human? Are you talking to humans? One of my big philosophy is I don't think about personas and I don't think about roles. I see everybody as a unique human. That's the common denominator behind all of our different users, regardless of the industry, regardless of the product and service. So what I'm looking for is, can you be able to speak to humans in different tones, right? Because people want to be spoken to and want to communicate in the way that's most familiar to them. So I'm looking for examples of, okay, what's a casual tone that you use? What is a technical tone that you use? If you're going into the cloud, a lot of your clientele are going to be geeks and nerds, right? They're looking for a very technical conversation, clear cut, to the point, as simple and as efficient as possible. Unless you have the situation where you're releasing something that isn't as technical, that is really more for the home consumer, for example, or the hobbyist in there, that can take on a completely different tone. Do you have the ability to speak in multiple different manners to different types of humans along the way? That's the main thing that I'm looking for, is that diversity and that ability to connect with humans via words. That's the most important. Now, the second part was, it was, how do I handle challenging clients? Was that it?
conflicting feedback from multiple
Oh,
stakeholders?
absolutely. In regards to content. So I am all about users, getting users behind you, right? We can have a conversation around what I like versus what you like and versus what they like all day long. That are with hey, yeah, and 95% of the people like this tone better, like this description better in there. Nobody usually wants to say, oh, screw 95% of the users. We're going to go with what I think. Go get that data. Go get that feedback. And that's going to be your sword and shield. One of my big lines is data is the designer's sword and shield. If we can't measure what we do, it's going to be a conversation that's all about opinions. And we know with the opinions, whoever's at either the loudest or at the top is going to win every time. And often they shouldn't be winning. So when we go into design, whether it's getting the usage data of where things are currently at, we talked about value stream maps. It is the ultimate tool for a designer to get the information and the data that they need to prove and defend any design work that they do, right? But user research, market research, usability testing, this is all data that can be used to end these opinionated conversations and say, this is proof. This is valid proof of why this solution is the best. And that's the way we need to go. So to avoid those conversations before I even get into them, I make sure that I have all the data to back me up in that conversation. And once that comes into the play, it sort of ends it. A VP at Amazon put it best. And he said, if you have data, let's talk about it. If you have an opinion, I'm going with mine. And that really sort of sums it up. That's one of the best pieces of advice I can give as far as being able to move your agenda forward versus somebody else's opinion. Is that good?
Yeah, that's
awesome.
That's really awesome. Thank you. I love that. I'm going with my opinion and most of the data.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got just a few more. So one is from Gemma. She wants to know, and this comes up a lot in a lot of our events and a lot of our conversations from people transitioning into design. What are the most important soft skills to have?
Soft skills to have. Number one is going to be empathy, right? Which is usually designers' greatest skill of all, right? Empathy is going to allow you to associate with and meet at the same level of whomever you're working with, whether it's a teammate, a brand new employee, your boss, your client, the executive. The best soft skill is be able to humanize along the way. There's tons of others that we can get into, but first and foremost, it has to be that. You have to be able to see the other person's point of view, understand that, and then be able to convey to them in their terms the things that they understand, the things that are important to them, your idea and why it's good for them. So a great example it's both a soft and a hard skill is that for any presentation that I have, I probably have 4 to 8 different versions of the exact same information, but set up in a different way that's going to appeal to those particular audiences. When I do presentations, there's 3 golden rules, and this kind of works for everything. It's like, who is your audience? What is, get to know them, what's important to them, find out as much as you can. I'll go look at, inside companies' information as articles are put about them. I'll go out to Facebook's, I'll go out to LinkedIn, I'll go out to, for executives, I'll go out to Wall Street articles, and I really get to know what their drivers are. The second part of the presentation is, what is it that they need to hear versus what is it you want to tell them. Because we always like to talk about our work, and we talk about a lot of the things that are important to us, but you have to talk about the things that are important to them. And the last one is, if you do your presentation correctly, what is your ask? If you've got somebody believing in you and really wanting to go forward, be ready to move your agenda forward. Just say, that's awesome. Here's what I need from you. In a conversation, it might be, hey, I need some more information about this. In a presentation, it might be, hey, we need some money along the way, or we need some resources to get this done. But that's your opportunity to really begin to get the things that you need for success. So there are a bunch of different soft skills, but if you can associate with people, then it's going to make everything else harder along the way.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay. The next question that we have is, wait, sorry, I got a little bit lost. The next one we have is from Andreina. I hope I said your name right. The question is, you mentioned that networking with people is helpful because they can lead you to better opportunities. How do you determine that? What are the things that you look for when you are meeting people in a professional setting?
Oh, so here's my method that I do is that, and this isn't just in a professional setting. Another thing that I can't recommend enough is what I call beers and burgers. Get people out of the professional setting. Go out to lunch with them. Go, invite them to, dinner and drinks. Get out of that formality. Now, humans, all of us, by default, we like to talk about ourselves. We like to talk about the things that are interesting to us, right? We want to really share things about us, even if it's just moving our agenda forward, right? Even if it's not, hey, I like to fish and ski in my family. And it's like, hey, these projects are really important to me. And here's what's so cool about what I have going on. I let people talk as much as possible. I ask questions that trigger the things that I know they're interested, that they want to provide more information about. And so it's really opening the door for them to really let loose whatever's on their mind. And, you begin to listen for those things that are, relevant to you or are potential opportunities. Somebody may say, hey, yeah, I run these particular groups and we're working on these types of projects. And you go, oh, wow, that's exactly the kind of project I want to get into. Or, holy cow, I'm really into artificial intelligence. I would love to begin to work on that kind of stuff. So let people talk as much as possible. That's how you're going to learn the most about them. And that's where you're going to find the majority of the opportunities when you let them do that. Now, more advanced people with that particular soft skill will start to do the same to you, right? So as they begin to come around and they start asking about you, that's your opportunity to really shine, but in context to what's important to them. Listen to what they've talked about. So when they do start talking to you, you can put it in terms that are interesting and of value to them. Make them curious about your skill sets and what you bring there. And that's really what's going to begin to open the doors for you.
Awesome.
It's sneaky, I know.
Yeah, our next question is kind of a little bit of a piggyback onto what you were just saying.
Okay.
So another question from BiPi, again, it's like, how do you start a conversation with someone if you're interested in their company? Is it kind of appropriate to let people know that you're interested in working for that company, or should you just reserve that just for a hiring manager?
Oh, no. Again, that's part of the networking, right? Is you never know who knows who. I get, we all get job offerings all the time, right? Design is really, really hot. And I'm sure you guys are getting just unsolicited all the time, right? But, as you begin to reach out, directly with people, number one, it's usually seen as a very positive thing. You're proactive. They're not having to search for you. You've actually already come to them. And again, when you, hopefully you're targeting the right people and you know they already have an interest. But even if you don't know, it comes back to you don't know everything that they have, and you don't know who they know and everything they have. A lot of the times when I talk to people, most of it is a miss, right? You never know who you're actually going to be able to talk to the first time, whether you meet somebody at, a forum like this or some sort of show or some sort of chat along the way. But as we get to talking, they're like, hey, you know what? I really need to get you together with so and so. I know that person is looking for somebody with your particular talents or your particular skill sets. So don't worry about being proactive. That is seen as a very, very good thing. Don't worry about rejections. That's okay too. If they don't have that position, it's nothing against you. If, you apply for something and you don't get it, they hired somebody better than you. And if there's somebody better than you, you can't take that rejection personally. It's just a good business decision and start to go on. So absolutely keep doing what you're doing. That's all building that network. And even though you never hear from, nothing ever happens, you never know. That person may remember you, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and say, oh, let me go look at that person in an email again. Okay, let me start that conversation back up with her. Did that answer it?
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Awesome. Our next question is from Paula, and it's about empathy and the workplace. So how do you navigate when people think that because you disagree with something that they say that you have no empathy or you're not validating
them? So what I would say is validate them. Validate them, and that is sort of empathy. So so the first one that I use is, especially when people have a request, right? It's like, okay, they come up with this crazy request from you. I don't say no. I say yes, and here's what it's going to take to do that, right? Or if it's more of a statement and it's philosophical, I always say, I understand. I totally understand what you're saying. I'm following your logic. I see how you arrived there. Let me explain to you how I'm arriving where I'm at. A lot of the conflict that I find that happens between design and development or design and business is really not malicious. It's almost always a lack of knowledge. We were talking before this all started that our industry as digital design is really only about 15 years old, 20 at the latest. Business and technology, or business and engineering, well, engineering's been around since the 1950s, right? And business has been around for tens of thousands of years. They're very, very mature roles and responsibilities. Design is brand new. Really, in the grand scheme of things, we just got here. So people don't know us. They don't understand us. Companies are still trying to figure out, how to best use this. What is the best ROI? What are the best processes to work with this? So again, go back to that empathy and listen to them. Just say, I ask all the time, it's like, okay, please help me understand. I'm absolutely interested and fascinated in what you've arrived at. Walk me through that so I can understand what's going on. And that's that empathy, right? Now people feel heard. They feel important. They feel like they're a partner in the conversation. And then you can turn around and say, I totally got it. Let me walk you through how I arrived at this. And a lot of that time, you'll find they didn't know something about what you did. And they didn't understand why that one thing took you off on a different tangent. And so share that with them. And then, at the end of the day, if there's still a difference of opinion in there, that's when you begin to say, okay, what's our compromise? You see my point, I see your point. Where is the common ground here? And when you've done all of that ahead of time, people are usually much, much more willing to compromise. and work with you, because now they at least understand your logic and your point of view. And there's a whole other session that we can talk about. It's really the biggest piece of advice that I can give for designers is never take anything personally. Everything is all about business. At the end of the day, we're working in a company, we're working in a corporation. It's there to make money. That is literally their only job. So if somebody in business makes a business decision, despite you doing your very, very best, don't take that personally. You did your job. You did it to the best of your ability. You did what you loved. And if business decides not to go with that, you don't own that. Don't take that personally. Don't get upset about it. That's a business decision being made by somebody else. You did your best. That was the important part. Love what you do.
Couldn't agree more. Also, awesome. So our next question is another one from Pollock, and it's how do you check for leadership skills in UX? I was hoping, could you clarify that a little bit, Pollock? Did you mean like maybe during the hiring or interviewing process? How does Ares check somebody's leadership skills? Or
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I do, especially for the senior designer, well, for any designer, I go through their portfolio, right? And the first thing that I'll be absolutely honest, when I look at a resume, I don't look at your name, I don't look at your work history, I don't look at your academic. I just go right to your portfolio. And my theory is like, if you can't sell yourself in 60 seconds as to what you do, it's going to probably be difficult for me to get behind you. It should be very obvious, especially by the time you're a senior designer. So when talking to them, leadership, you can't really tell until you're talking to them. So the first thing I ask is, okay, what exactly did you do on these portfolio pieces? And if you're saying you were the lead on this, what exactly were you responsible for? What did you deliver? Now, the first thing I'm looking for is how they present themselves. Do they have sort of the soft skills? Do they have that knowledge? Do they have the technical acumen? Do they have the design acumen? Are they clearly able to articulate the principles and the philosophies and the thinking and the solutions behind all of these different things? And then my next question is, who were the other people that were involved in this? A lot of the times we work on teams. And so, if somebody's a lead, they're a lead or they're a design leader, I start getting into what were the politics behind this? What happened with, your particular people on this project? What was the schedule? I always take a look at how much work something was, and I ask, what was the timeline? How quick did you get this done? So, we're looking for both, the ability to lead, to be effective and deliver, but also, were you able to inspire your people to really be able to meet this deadline, regardless of the challenges in there? A lot of the leadership stuff are things that I don't ask questions about. What I'm looking for is this person talking about other designers? That's my real big interest. If somebody just comes in and talks about just themselves, probably not. I'm going to question, what kind of leader they are, right? When people come in and they talk about, hey, I'm all about mentoring. I'm all about servant leadership. I'm all about, improving the design community and the soft skills and the technical skills of what's going on. I'm all about working outside in the design community. Let me tell you some stories about, how I was able to lift somebody's career up or, make something work really good for the other designer. If they're not talking about those things on their own, it's probably not a priority to them. If they're so busy trying to sell themselves and what they've done, then they've kind of missed the mark as a leader. Now, that's not always the only indicator. If I don't hear anything specific, it's kind of a red flag, but then that forces me to begin to ask those type of questions, right? It's like, okay, how many mentees do you have? How many mentors do you have? What are you doing to improve your coworker skill sets? What are you doing to your design community? What are you giving back to them? How are you moving the design agenda forward for all designers? So, I don't like to ask the questions. I like people to freely give that. And, if talking about other designers and leading them on their own, that's really what I'm hoping for. Those have turned out to be by far the best design leaders.
Awesome. Good. All right, good to know. We have one more question from Louise. So she said, so kind of touching back on what you were talking about, like the data is the sword that the designer wields to sort of
sword and shield.
Yeah, to sort of carve that pathway. So she's saying data, meaning like research, testing, etc. Besides having the data, like, are there other things outside of just the hard data that we as designers can show stakeholders, that can help sort of move that conversation along? So if data is like the sword and the shield, are there any other extra grenades?
I love it. I love it. I talk about data as ammunition all the time. So when I say data, it is a very general term, right? We can focus on, hey, let's get into the system and the logs to see what is the usage data, what is the abandonment rate, what is time on page. There's hard data that we're talking about, but data can also be general research. Right. We went out and we tested this and we got all of these comments. That's data and that's feedback in there. Data is, hey, we did a heuristic evaluation of us versus our competitors. And here's where we're at. That's data, right? We can say, okay, we've gone out to multiple design communities and these are the trends that are happening right now. So I just use data much like you're talking about, the ammunition, the grenades, be able to accurately, that's the most important part. Your data has to be rock solid or you're going to undermine yourself with inside of there. But again, if you come armed with more insight, more facts, then it's not an opinionated conversation anymore. And that's why I say data is the sword and shield, right? First of all, it's the shield. You're going to get a lot of opinions thrown at you that your data is going to disprove immediately. And it's the sword because you can actually use that to quote unquote attack other people's positions on things, right? They usually don't have that data, which means you don't have a shield, which means you can just lay into them with that. Do it nicely, do it kindly, but that's really what we're talking about. So don't take data literally. Use it as just facts. Come in with all of the facts that you can.
Thank you.
Did that answer it?
Yeah, yes. And I actually have a little bit of follow-up because I was thinking about, we tend to still have folks that are doing design for design's sake, not for the user's sake, is what I'm going to say. So they're out there to make a portfolio piece or to, pretty design or that type of thing. So I think the data can go a long way when we have someone doing design for design's sake instead of for the user's sake. And that's what I was trying to follow up with is I guess
what do you mean for
for
design's sake?
Just
I'm
to make
sure.
a nice design, just to make, we like it, this color and this happening, and that they're visual designers.
Expression. Their own aesthetic expression.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. If you're not doing anything that has a KPI that you don't have a measure of success for, right? If great example is, personal sites. It's all about me. I'm not trying to make any money. This isn't a business thing. I'm just doing a beautiful website because, that's what I want to do. That's different, right? That's totally and objectively your opinion. And by all means, do great design if that's what makes you feel good. But usually, you know, especially when we talk about a professional situation, there has to be results. You know, I like to tell designers, it's like, if you're not making or saving more money than what your salary is, you're not a good investment. And quite honestly, the company shouldn't have you here. You know, our job is a commercial art. It's not a fine art. It's a commercial art. So it's all about ROI. And that's why having those KPIs and the measures of success, and then having the data that both creates a baseline of where we're at right now, and then the data that shows how much you've improved, you know, the time, the money, the cost in there, that's where that data comes into play. And so, you know, take a look at, you know, if you have no goal and objective that's, you know, success based, yeah, do whatever you want. If you're doing this to meet objectives, then yeah, data should drive everything you're doing. Data driven design for sure.